Hey everybody, it's me, Root Beer, and I'm here with my emotional support Bocheese. I haven't made that joke in a while. So, like I mentioned on stream, I do kind of want to just yap about set 3 now that we can kind of look at it with the benefit of hindsight. And I would classify set 3 as kind of a medium impact set, like, knowing what we know from the Japanese meta, we obviously have Shoujo Doji, which has kind of supplanted Shiranui as the best deck. And then, of course, we have the cover card, Daiyusha, which I would probably put around like a tier 2 strategy. We also have things like Archite and Stohiraja, aka the Codex strategy, as kind of like lower tier or like rogue decks, you know? And price wise is also kind of come out like middle of the pack. So obviously we're still within like the release weekends. Prices are still like pretty low because people are figuring things out and like buyouts haven't happened from like new hype yet. So we kind of have this nice period where things are still moderately affordable, at least like out of the box. I think the problem with things like Daiyusha and Shoujo Doji is getting all of the support cards around them. But, if you're like a newer or like a budget player, I think there are some things in this set for you. And like, even in terms of like the great or the new generic triple R's, so we have like Forcolor and Alvina. Those are both like $15, which I wouldn't really call affordable, but they're also not like as expensive as things like the Cyclers or the Dual Nations, which were all like 20 plus on release. So, interesting little thing we got going on here. So, let's crack into some packs while I just kind of continue yapping on about all of the new things. So, obviously, like the biggest thing to look out for out of this set is, of course, Bozo Doji. So he is kind of the top tier new meta, and it's not hard to see why. Like, if you know what the deck is capable of, you'll know that it just has like a lot of flexibility going on for it. So starting off, we already have like the Mythiarch support. I do just kind of have that deck like randomly kicking around, so I might take the effort to like go back and like rebuild it. But like as I was saying with Shoujo Doji, the deck is just like super adaptable. So obviously you have the tools to make a fifth attack with like that promo grade 2 that calls itself out of bind. You have cards like Unprecedented that gain like plus 10k, so it can be a big beater that gets over defensive triggers, and it also draws you a card. Unfortunately, if you didn't have Unprecedents from like earlier waves of support, then it is unfortunately now a $30 card, which kind of sucks. Like, Shoujo Doji overall is like, I'd say mid-priced. All of the relevant support cards, aside from Unprecedented, are around like $10 range. So, if you're like a mid-range competitive player and you don't have like a ton of money to spare, but a little bit, you could probably afford most of Shoujo Doji except for Unprecedented, which is very annoying. We also have these generic booster dragons, which are just kind of bad. But yeah, so Shoujo Doji is kind of like the most obvious high impact card out of this set, where it just kind of does everything. You have some draw power with like Izazo and Unprecedented. You have like countercharging, you have extra attacks. Shoujo Doji can use his call skill defensively and offensively, so you can kind of play the grind game, and against something like Blangmire, if you have stealth PGs, you can bind those off of Shoujo Doji's effect and then like call them defensively afterwards to kind of stop the divine skill, which is really big for it. Ryu, nothing too big out of this pack. Uh, After that, we of course have Daiyusha, who is like kind of a tier 2 deck right now, so I'd put it in a similar place as what's his name? Varga, where you have like a restanding Vanguard that loses its drive, so it kind of makes medium pressure, but like as you kind of get going through the game, once your opponent gets to grade 3, I believe you can give all of your D Robos an extra 5k. You of course have cards like Die Lady that get plus 10k to become like really big beaters. I don't think there was anything important in this one. Yeah, just rares. Uh, the base card for Dimensional Robo, since it's in here, Like this kind of lets you build a board without committing as much from your hand, so you can kind of conserve your hand size. The restand ability is kind of a minus since you put a card from hand into your soul and then you like lose your drive checks unless you bind Go Yusha, but you can only bind the Go Yusha once, so it's not like the greatest thing. I think people supplement Dayusha with some of the like generic cards, like the Brantgate Dark States Dual Nation has kind of gotten hyped up like all of her sisters. She's now like a $20 card alongside the other ones, which is kind of unfortunate because it was like 5 on release, and I think uh Dayusha is pretty affordable otherwise. Oh, look, our first triple rare is Sacrifice Glass, which is one of the new things coming in this set, as long as we're on the subject of new cards. I don't think Sacrifice Glass is very good. It's, like, very gimmicky, but you do have, like, decent board control, and Saccharine Bait can get you, like, a ton of card advantage while kinda just cluttering your opponent's field with garbage, but it's also just too gimmicky. Like the point where you can get Grand Dogma to attack like twice takes too long. I think a lot of the best decks in the format will just kill you into the sun before that. And like you only have like the one double R grade 2 that gains 10k, otherwise your rear guards are kind of small. So, Sacrifice Glass is not like the greatest, but oh, Coty Blaze, so another triple R. This deck is another one that's just like not doing anything, right? Like I don't think I've seen anybody talk about this deck at all. I have a couple people at my locals who are pet decking it, and I think the problem with Coty Blaze is just the same problem with stuff like Murakumo or Liel, where like the cloning gimmick puts you in a really weird place where you just kind of have to have it, right? So if your opponent is able to interact with your board in any meaningful way, like that already puts you in a bit of a difficult position. Like you can just lose to yourself in very frustrating ways where it's like, well, I was not able to find 2 copies of this card. Oh well, sucks to suck. So this card hasn't really done anything, and like the gimmick where it can restand itself and then you can like attack again and restand the rear guards like takes so long because you have to get 2 copies of him in the soul. So similar to Sacrifice Glass, it's like by the time you get it online, I think most of the like competent decks in the meta will just kill you. uh uh Nothing here. So we were talking about D-Robo before kind of getting sidetracked off of Sacrifice Glass and Coty Blaze. So those two are kind of the bad decks of the format. And kind of the unfortunate thing about Sacrifice Glass is that it feels like the triple R generic for the deck for this set, for Color, was kind of custom made for it, where the energy charges on place, and then if you energy blast 3 or more for a card effect this turn, you can like retire her to draw after it boosts. And Sacrifice Glass, of course, energy blasts 4 for the Grand Dogma skill, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like this is technically generic, but clearly was designed to support Sacrifice Glass, so while the rest of the deck is like pennies, this one card is like $15 for a deck that's like not even rogue tier right now. Speaking of rogue tier decks, like one of the other things introduced was Dalharaja, or else known as the Codex strategy. So that one I would classify as like a rogue deck. The major thing that Codex has going for it is it has a really strong early game. So one of the codexes can call things back from the drop zone, which means you can just kind of like dump out your hand, aggro your opponent. If they decide to like retire or attack your rear guards, then the codex can kind of bring it back. It also means you have some freedom to just kind of get rid of things early when you're discarding for your ride line. And then once you kind of get going, the second codex order can reduce your opponent's power by 3k until the end of their turn, so they're just kind of really small. Hey, a frame rare version of the double R. That's pretty cool. I can add this to my collection and make my deck slightly shinier now. I just have a bunch of random shinies for this deck. I don't know why. But Yeah, so I think like Stoa Raja is really good at going aggro on your opponent. Like the grade one for the deck also. Let's see if I can find it in this pile here. Oops, where did it go? All right, well, uh, yeah, right here. So the grade one for the strategy, it's like at the end of the battle, it attacks or boosts, you just shove it in the soul and check top seven for a codex. So this is something you can just kind of put out early. The deck does go through a lot of soul because the debuff order has the soul blast too. So it's like you need the soul anyways, and then if you just like throw it down, swing your opponent, and then it goes into soul, your opponent can't damage deny you. And then you have a couple tools to bring it back, either just with the order if you really don't have any other targets, or just with like Alvina, the generic triple R for the set, aka my VTuber persona. I'm gonna make that joke real one of these days, you'll see. But yeah, like I think Stoharaja is a really good like rogue tier strategy where you have a lot of really strong early aggro. You can just kind of put things on the board. The order calls them back for free, so you can kind of work with it, and you technically only need like the one counterblast to restand. It'd be nice to have a second one for the triple R grade 2 that searches your codexes, but if you can't do that, it's not the end of the world. I think the major weakness of the codex strategy is just going to be the fact that your hand sizes are kind of fake. You have like this, the grade 2, the ride line are all like searching out codexes for you. So it's like, I have 10 cards in my hand, and four of them are orders, you know, which is just kind of unfortunate. Uh, Debuff, where you make your opponent 10k and they only have one drive, goes a long way in kind of stopping some of their pressure. It means, like, especially if they couldn't find a Persona ride, that you can really save on hand, not having to always PG the Vanguard. But I think like the lack of defensive options for this strategy just kind of puts it more into the rogue tier. The grade 3 is another one that helps. It like lowers power by the original power until the end of turn, which means if you're playing a strategy that likes to restand their rear guards, like that can be a way to like really stop your opponent's offense. So it does kind of feel like this deck is trying to find defensive options outside of the hand by like debuffing the opponent's cards, which kind of helps with the fact that you have fake hand sizes. But I do think ultimately the stronger decks in the format will probably be able to push through that. And yeah, unfortunately, the grade 3 also only gets like rear guard. So if your opponent makes a lot of strong vanguard pressure, like Langmeyer, for example, there's like nothing you can really do about that. And we have also now pulled Daedra, the undercover support. So another pretty good like budget archetype for this strategy. So it is a brand new one. Their gimmick is that they have their own special order, Underground Trust, where you put cards onto the order as like a gauge, and then the grade 3 Mordalion, which I do have right here, like calls them back out. And then if you have three Undercover Trust, you can like he gives all of your undercover rear guards plus 5k. So it's like a pretty decent strategy. It runs kind of light on resources. The only thing that really counterblasts is like his ability. And then I don't think anything else in Archetype really counterblasts. Like there's the new Obscudide, which I also do just have like Daedra counterblast for the search, this counterblast for like the call, and then everything else is just like, okay, you have Obscudide, which is a soul blast, and then uh Mordalion's ability to put things in the gauges is an energy blast. So I think this is like a halfway decent like budget archetype. The main problem with it right now is just the fact that it's not finished. So, unfortunately, all of your cards kind of care about the undercover name, and there just aren't enough good ones that you can really like make a full deck with it. So you have like Daedra, you have Obscudide, and there's like a grade 1 Tiger that's like a rare. It's right here, that are all like the good cards in the strategy. So like the Tiger, you can like boost with it and then bounce it to your hand and then like recycle cards from the drop zone to give it 5k shield. So it's like a nice defensive and offensive option for the deck. And then like recycling cards gives you more opportunities to like find things to put as gauges again, which is really cool. But then you have the rest of the cards, which are just like the cards from the ride line. I don't know if I've pulled them. I haven't been paying super close attention to my low rarity pulls. Uh, okay, well, this is just the starter. Uh, okay, yeah, here. You have like the grade 2 from the ride line, which is just like plus 5,000, drink. And it's like, okay, well, those are the only other undercover names that you have right now, which means your options are to either play the generic heater slop like Sergalon, which is $20 and makes you very sad, or, play with these, which just kind of suck. So I think that's the big problem with Undercover, and probably the thing that's like holding it back right now is there's just not enough good Undercover names. But Daedra is the only remotely expensive card. It's around $7. Like Mordalion and Obscudite, despite being high rarities, are all like pennies right now. So if you are looking to get like a new player into the game, or you want like a halfway decent budget deck, I don't think Undercover is like meta or anything. I would classify it personally as just kind of like a middle of the road, like boringly competent deck. Like you'll probably do decently enough at your locals with it, but it's probably not going to take down like a major tournament or anything. But yeah, if you just wanted like a cheap middle of the road deck just to like have, Undercover is not a terrible one, and since it's a lore archetype, they'll probably give it a deck saving promo eventually. Sorry, budget players. Ooh, uh, I forgot. One of the things that comes in this set are all of the Bang Dream crits. So I have a signed one. That's neat. If I wanted to just make a deck really shiny, which I might do with Stalharaja, I also have another signed crit from the last time the Bang Dream cards came out. But yeah, that's a cool pull. So yeah. Alright, let's see what's up. And then I think after Undercover, the last major thing that's coming out in this set is Archite, which uh I from topping results, I can see has become like a decent tier 2 to rogue strategy. It has like a handful of tops, mostly in like the lower half of top 16, but it's like good enough that you could probably classify it somewhere in the realm of meta, right? Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of knowledge about that deck, so I can't tell you definitively how good or bad it is. Sorry about that. Like the other ones, I've either tested or I can at least just figure out from looking at the cards, but Archite plays a little weirdly because you kind of have the like resource loop with your like monsters and your orders. I know it has a really strong offensive tool in the form of the new like triple R light ray monster that gets like 10k and a crit and also reduces your opponent by 5k. So like I know that obviously increases the offensive power of the deck, and like Archite herself gives you 5 attacks now over the old one, which was 4. Look, another Grand Dogma. And another Obscu died. I'm getting kinda mid pulls right now, gonna be perfectly honest. Although, I will say, my prize packs earlier today, I was playing with the new stuff. I did get Bracing Angel Ladder, which was reprinted in this set. That's another card to look out for. Compared to, like, the $100 that the original Triple Drive booster had, this one is only, like, 15. Shiranui is kind of on its way, not out, per se, but on its way down. So, it's, like, still sort of valuable if you're playing a deck that can afford the Regalis piece. And then, of course, we also have things like Messiah has come into the meta recently. So, like, if you wanted to stop them from lock and binding your cards, then, like, that is another, like, tech choice to use. Actually, no, it does work against Shoujo Doji too, because I was gonna say Shoujo Doji targets circles, but Bracing Angel Ladder also makes it so your cards can't be moved to a different place, so it also does kind of stop Shoujo Doji from being able to remove your cards, which is one of its strengths, right? Unfortunately, my high rarity pulls are not like super great out of this box right now. So yeah, like I think overall, like I said at the beginning, this is a very medium impact set. You have one deck that has shot to the top of the meta, and then just like a couple of pretty good decks that are kind of around like rogue tier playability. Oh, right, I guess while we're here, they have also given support to things like Genesis, Gold Paladin, Narukami, and of course, in addition to Mythiarch, we also got new like arms support, which again, like the support does what the deck wants. Like it gives you more Vanguard pressure, gives you a few defensive options, but obviously wasn't good enough to actually push the deck into like meta playability. So, only just okay. So yeah, that's kind of just the story of this set, I think, is like pretty okay. Like the prices aren't terrible. Like like if you're trying to play on a budget, I would probably look into Undercover. I think you could make it work. Also, like the generic Cheater Triple R from the grade one that's like you look at the top. Oh, hey, speaking of monsters, this is the light ray monster I was talking about. But yeah, like the grade one from this set, the generic grade one that's like Counterblast one, call something from hand, draw a card. That one's not terribly expensive, unfortunately. Like I don't know if Mordalion can afford that amount of blasting right now, but if you wanted some sort of alternative to Sergalon, like that's something. Of course, you can also just run like Painkiller Angel, which is not super duper expensive. Like, because Undercover has the order that can like play itself from the drop zone. I don't think I have. Here it is, Undercover Trust. Like, you can play from the drop zone. You don't strictly need any of the cycle cards, so like Biscotti or Spiral Cutie, which means you can build Undercover mostly on a budget. You just kind of have to find something to like fill the extra gaps left by not having enough good names. So yeah, that is our entire box. It was not a great one. There wasn't like a ton of stuff in the set to begin with. We got a silver rare of just like a bad card that I don't think is really seeing use. Personally, I am building Sacrifice Glass just for like shits and giggles, so you know, pulling these kind of puts me a little bit closer to having the deck. I also did just pull like Daedra and Obscudides, so I'm now on 3 Daedras and 3 Obscudides. Like, again, that deck is pennies, so maybe I'll just put together a deck list. And I already have the full Stoa Raja deck, but I guess I'm just slowly acquiring more and more shiny things for that. So yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, everybody. Bye. Oh no, the packs have covered my emotional support, Bochi. Let me save you from the pile of garbage. Alright, bye.